Good day, good people, and welcome to Revolutionary Belovedness on Contemplative Inner Being. I'm Robert Farrell, and you are welcome whether you are here for the live session or watching the recording. Thank you so much for being here. If you will, let me know in the chat section that you can hear me okay. And as a reminder, the chat section remains open, so at any time you have something you would like to share, please do so in the chat section, whether it's a comment, reflection, question, whatever it might be. We're glad you're here. In this session, we are going to focus on universal dignity and the moral imagination. We're going to approach them not as an idea to agree with, but as a way of seeing that can be practiced. So this, about an hour, will invite our attention to dignity and how it is sensed in the body and how quickly perception narrows when it's under pressure and how it can soften again through presence. Our practice today will draw from revolutionary love, especially the discipline of seeing no stranger. Rather than asking what we believe about dignity, I'm hopeful that this session will invite some curiosity about how we encounter one another, and particularly across difference or unfamiliarity. These sessions throughout the year are tied to our theme of revolutionary belovedness, where we are tying in the teachings of Valerie Kaur in Revolutionary Love, the teachings of Wayne Teasdale in his book, The Mystic Heart. And the third piece we are tying together are the teachings of Richard Rohr in his 8 principles for the Center for Action and Contemplation. And as we go through tonight's exploration, we will talk about grief, breath, listening, wonder, imagination, and how they all play a role in this explanation. Each of them becomes a way of staying present to complexity without withdrawing or hardening. There is nothing to solve or achieve tonight. The intention is simply to stay with the experience of seeing and to explore what becomes possible when dignity is treated as intrinsic and relational rather than abstract or conditional. I will lead us through 4 sections. One, just a brief centering to bring us to the present moment. I'll share about a 15-minute reflection. Then we're going to have spiritual practice in the form of a guided meditation. After that time, we will share some time for conversation. I will have 4 or 5 prompt questions to help us enter into dialogue. So you are invited now to settle the body into a posture that feels both supported and alert. Allow the breath to arrive naturally, meeting the body just as it is. Feel the weight of the body resting on the earth, held in quiet steadiness. Notice the subtle movement of breath in the chest and belly. Bring your awareness to your face, softening the muscles around the eyes and jaw. Sense what it feels like to look at the world from a place of ease rather than defense. Let your heart space open slightly, not by effort, but by permission. And let's just remain here for a few breaths, practicing the posture of seeing, trusting that this way of seeing can be carried into every encounter. Take a gentle, deep breath now and allow yourself to remain present as we reflect on universal dignity and the moral imagination. Friends, universal dignity begins as a way of seeing. Before it becomes an ethic, a principle, or a social commitment, it arises as perception. Seeing no stranger names this shift as its most elemental level. It describes a trained attention that encounters another human being and recognizes shared humanity prior to judgment, story, or fear. This recognition does not erase difference. It places difference inside a deeper field of belonging. Dignity emerges here not as an idea to defend, but as something immediately sensed, like warmth or gravity, present even when obscured. Friends, this phrase, unity in diversity, names a way of understanding belonging that holds both what is shared and what is distinct. It recognizes that human life arises from a common ground of dignity, vulnerability, and relationality, while taking form through countless differences of culture, history, belief, language, temperament, and experience. And unity does not dissolve these differences, nor does it ask them to conform to a single pattern. It holds them together in relationship. In this sense, unity is not uniformity. It's not compliance. It does not require agreement or sameness. Unity rests on love as a binding force that allows difference to remain alive, expressive, and valued. Diversity is not merely tolerated within unity, it is welcomed as a source of wisdom that deepens the whole. Each distinct perspective reveals something essential about the human condition that no single viewpoint can contain on its own. Unity in diversity also carries ethical significance. It calls for ways of seeing and relating that resist exclusion, hierarchy, and domination. It supports belonging that remains intact even in the presence of disagreement or tension. When lived rather than asserted, unity and dignity shapes communities' capability of listening across difference, holding complexity with humility, and imagining shared futures grounded in dignity, care, and mutual respect. Seeing no stranger invites a profound reorientation of the moral imagination. It asks perception to move beneath reflex and beyond inheritance. Every culture teaches who belongs and who doesn't, whose lives feel familiar and whose feel distant, whose pain registers indistinctively and whose remains abstract. These lessons settle quietly into the body and shape attention long before conscious choice appears. And revolutionary love does not shame these inheritances. It asks whether they tell the whole truth. Seeing no stranger opens the possibility that they don't. So this practice draws from the moral imagination out of abstraction and into encounter. It becomes harder to reduce a person to a category once their presence is felt as presence. Voice, gesture, breath, and vulnerability interrupt the mind's shortcuts. The other ceases to be an object of thought and becomes a subject of relationship. And in this shift, dignity stops depending on agreement or usefulness or resemblance. Dignity reveals itself as intrinsic, durable, and shared. Contemplative wisdom supports this practice by slowing perception enough to notice what is already there. And when attention rests rather than grasp, the nervous system settles. The body softens its defenses. And this settling allows a second way of seeing to emerge, one less governed by fear or control. Richard Rohr describes this as a deeper gaze that sees from participation rather than separation. And seeing no stranger belongs to this second gaze. It recognizes that separation is learned while belonging is original. Wayne Teasdale offers a complementary insight when he speaks of ontological interdependence. From this perspective, dignity arises from the very structure of reality. Life exists in relationship. No being stands alone, interbeing. And when this truth is apprehended inwardly rather than merely understood intellectually, solidarity naturally follows. Seeing no stranger becomes an expression of reality rather than a moral achievement. So the practice aligns perception with what already is. And revolutionary love insists that seeing no stranger is not passive awareness. It is disciplined attention practiced under pressure, because it matters most when fear, anger, or grief threaten to narrow the field of vision. And in moments of conflict or rupture, the body instinctively scans for threat. Stories will rush in to protect identity. The other risk becoming an enemy or an abstraction. Seeing no stranger interrupts this reflex. It pauses the story long enough to remember humanity even when disagreement remains sharp. This pause creates space for reimagining. You see, to reimagine does not float above reality. It grows directly out of seeing no stranger. So once the other is perceived as kin, imagination awakens to new possibilities for relationship, for response, for future. And the moral imagination expands beyond those inherited scripts of domination or withdrawal. It begins to ask, what dignity requires, what it requires now, here, between these people, under these conditions. Reimagining functions as the creative companion to perception. Seeing no stranger reveals what is already true. Reimagining explores what could become possible if that truth shaped action, if it shaped systems, if it shaped shared life. And it resists resignation. It refuses the claim that cruelty or exclusion represent inevitability. Instead, it treats imagination as a moral responsibility, one that's grounded in love rather than fantasy. And this reimagining draws energy from grief. Grief appears whenever dignity is denied or violated. And revolutionary love teaches that grief is not weakness. It is evidence of connection. Because people grieve what they love and what they refuse to abandon. In the context of universal dignity, grief keeps imagination honest. It prevents spiritual bypassing. It names the cost of dehumanization and refuses to normalize it. Grief widens the heart precisely because it acknowledges loss while remaining open. Breath also plays a quiet yet essential role here. Take a gentle, deep breath. Breathing restores presence when emotions intensify. Breathing returns attention to the body, which always lives in the present moment. Breath steadies perception and supports the practice of seeing no stranger when tension arises. Breath allows dignity to remain embodied rather than conceptual. And in this way, breath becomes a form of contemplation woven directly into ethical life. Take another gentle, deep breath. And friends, listening deepens this process. When listening is practiced as a way of honoring dignity, it reshapes moral imagination from the inside. See, the stories carry worlds within them. They reveal histories, they reveal wounds, they reveal resilience, and they reveal longing that cannot be inferred from surface markers. Listening receives these worlds without rushing to fix or judge. It allows another person's experience to stand as authoritative about their own life. Through listening, imagination becomes educated by reality rather than assumption. Additionally, seeing no stranger transforms how harm is understood. You see, harm no longer defines identity. It becomes something that happens within a field of dignity rather than something that erases it. And this distinction changes everything. because accountability remains essential. Boundaries matter, yet responses arise from care rather than contempt. Justice seeks restoration because dignity remains intact on all sides. And this orientation reflects Valerie Kaur's insistence that love holds boundaries without hatred. And Richard Rohr's insights into shadow support this work by reminding us practitioners that projection narrows imagination. What is denied internally often appears externally as threat. Let that sink in for a second. What is denied internally often appears externally as threat. Seeing no stranger includes seeing one's own fear, your own bias, your own vulnerability with honesty and compassion. This kind of self-seeing stabilizes the work. It prevents moral imagination from becoming another form of superiority. And instead, humility emerges as clarity rather than diminishment. Back to Wayne Teasdale again, his emphasis on humility of heart resonates deeply here because humility recognizes that no single perspective holds the whole truth. It fosters teachability and gratitude. And within revolutionary love, humility allows imagination to remain flexible and responsive. It invites learning across difference rather than defensive certainty. Dignity flourishes in this atmosphere because it is no longer contingent on being right or dominant. And friends, as imagination expands, joy quietly enters the picture. You see, joy does not deny suffering. It affirms life even amid struggle. Joy sustains the practice of seeing no stranger over time. It reminds communities that belonging generates energy rather than depletion. This is core to our title this year, Revolutionary Belovedness, because that is what generates belonging, and belonging generates energy rather than depletion. And this joy is not exuberance for its own sake. It is the steady warmth of connection that makes long faithfulness possible. And friends, reimagining dignity also carries implications for shared life and structures. Systems reflect imagination. When imagination remains narrow, systems reinforce exclusion. When imagination expands, new forms of belonging become conceivable. Revolutionary love invites people to imagine situations, policies, and cultures that reflect the truth of shared humanity. And this reimagining begins locally, in relationships and communities willing to practice dignity daily. Even the practice in revolutionary love known as transition becomes part of the journey. as imagination reshapes identity. Letting go of inherited narratives can feel disorienting. Yet Revolutionary Belovedless names this as a necessary passage rather than a failure, because seeing no stranger gradually loses attachment to rigid identities and opens space for more relational ways of belonging. And throughout this process, contemplation remains the steady companion. Silence, stillness, prayer continue to train our perception. They return attention to the deeper ground where dignity is already secure. And from this ground, action emerges with greater coherence. Love moves from sentiment to discipline, from aspiration to embodiment. Universal dignity and the moral imagination. They reveal themselves as lived practices rather than abstract ideas. Seeing no stranger anchors perception in shared humanity. Reimagining opens creative possibility rooted in love. And together, supported by contemplative depth and interspiritual wisdom, they form a way of life capable of holding complexity, of holding grief, holding conflict, and holding all of that with hope. Now, this way of life, my friends, does not promise ease. It promises faithfulness. It asks people to remain present when fear urges withdrawal and when anger urges erasure. It invites imagination to stay awake, breath to stay steady, and love to remain courageous. And in doing so, it affirms a truth both ancient and urgently needed now. No one stands outside dignity, and no future worth inhabiting can be imagined apart from that recognition. Before I move into our guided inquiry, just want to provide us a couple of minutes of silence to let that ponder in your heart. If you have anything at all you would like to share in the chat, you can do so in those couple of minutes. Remember to breathe, to be. You are part of the universal dignity. Enter into the moral imagination. So we are going to take about 7, 8 minutes now into a guided inquiry. My hope is that this will offer some space to explore how seeing no stranger lives in the body and heart. This practice is going to invite some gentle attention to perception itself, how dignity is sensed, how it's withheld, or restored in real moments of encounter. So, this is a time for listening inwardly, allowing awareness to move beneath habit and story toward a deeper knowing shared by love and shaped by love. So let's begin by settling into a position that allows both ease and wakefulness. Feel the support beneath you. Just notice the simple fact of being here. Let the breath come and go naturally. No need to change it. Simply notice how the body receives each inhale and releases each exhale. Let your attention move to the surface of your skin and sense the boundary where the body meets the world. Feel the temperature of the air, subtle movement of clothing, the quiet aliveness of being embodied. Stay here for a few breaths. Allow the body to soften into presence. Good. Now let awareness move toward the eyes. Notice how the eyes rest in their sockets. Sense your muscles around them. Allow them to soften as if releasing a habit of scanning or bracing. And imagine seeing the world from this softened place. And notice how perception feels when it is unhurried. You are invited to bring to mind a person you encounter easily, someone whose presence feels familiar or safe, and simply notice what happens in the body as this person appears. Perhaps there is warmth, ease, a sense of recognition, and stay with the sensations rather than any story. Let the body teach you how familiarity feels. Good. Now, gently allow another image to arise. Someone less familiar, someone whose life, background, or perspective feels slightly distant from your own. And notice the first response in your body. Perhaps a tightening, curiosity, uncertainty, Whatever arises is welcome here. There's no need to judge it. Simply notice it. And stay with the breath as you hold this awareness. Feel the rhythm of inhaling and exhaling. Sense how breath moves through your body in this moment. And let your breath create space around whatever sensations are present. Now imagine meeting this person eye to eye, not as an idea, not as a role, simply as a living being, breathing somewhere in their own life. And notice what shifts in your body as you allow this image. What soften, what resist, what remains tender. Gently bring your awareness to your heart area and notice any sensations there: pressure, warmth, movement, stillness. Allow your heart to be exactly as it is. No fixing, no forcing, just presence. Good. Let a quiet question rest in your heart. What does it feel like to see this person as part of the same human family? Don't search for an answer. Let the body respond in its own way, through sensation, through image, through subtle shift. What does it feel like to see this person as part of the same human family? If you can, sense how grief may live here. Grief from harm endured, grief from distance, grief from the ways dignity has been denied. And notice where grief touches your body, perhaps as heaviness, perhaps as ache, perhaps as moisture behind the eyes. Let grief be a sign of care, a signal that love is present. And stay with the breath, breathing with grief, breathing with tenderness, Allow breath to hold what feels vulnerable. Good. Now invite your imagination to gently awaken without strain, without urgency. Imagine what might become possible if this person were met with dignity in every encounter, in systems, in conversations, in moments of disagreement. And notice how your body responds to this imagining. Does something open? Does something feel energized? Does something remain uncertain? All responses are welcome. Let wonder enter quietly. Wonder at the complexity of another life. Wonder at how much remains unseen. Wonder at the courage it takes to stay present. And feel how wonder shifts perception, how it interrupts certainty, how it creates space. Now bring awareness back to yourself. Notice your own presence, your own breath, your own dignity, and sense how this lands in your body. What feels steady? What feels stirred? What feels unfinished? And as we enter into the silence again for a couple of minutes, breathe in this phrase. Breathe in, no one is a stranger. Breathe out, no one is a stranger. Breathe in, no one is a stranger. Breathe out, no one is a stranger. Breathing in, no one is a stranger. Breathing out, no one is a stranger. Take a moment to begin to feel the room around you, the surface beneath you, the sounds nearby you. Let your eyes open when you're ready. And may your presence honor dignity wherever you go. Friends, we have some time for dialogue. I have some questions to hopefully as starters for that dialogue, but you can share anything you want at any time you want in the chat. I'm just going to name these questions. I'll put them in the chat. They'll be in the show notes with the recording so you can return to them, and they'll be on the Mighty Network so you can comment and reply there as well. The first one is, where in your own life do you notice dignity being extended easily? And where do you notice it becoming harder to sustain? What does this reveal about how your moral imagination has been shaped? And you can feel free to answer that. I'm just going to keep going, and at the end of these, I think I have 5 here. We'll come back if anyone, you can answer to any of these at all, or all of them, whatever you like. The second one is, what helps you move from a first reactive way of seeing to a second gaze that recognizes shared humanity, especially across difference or tension? Difference or tension. The third one is, how does this practice of seeing no stranger challenge or expand the boundaries of who you instinctively include in your sense of belonging? Fourth, in what ways does grief sharpen your awareness of dignity, either in your own life or in the wider world? And how does it influence what you are able to imagine as possible? And then the fifth one is, what might change in our communities, our relationships, or our shared life if universal dignity were treated as intrinsic rather than conditional? Again, if you want to provide, just a short answer in the chat for now, that's fine too. If you want to just answer one or all of them, anything at all. So whatever's touching your heart in this moment, what's coming up for you, just let us know in the chat. On the second one, what helps you move from a first reactive way of seeing to a second gaze that recognizes shared humanity, especially across difference or tension? What helps you move from that first gaze to the second one? And Benita says that knowing the person's story helps her. On that same second question, Bo replies, looking into the other person's eyes. Well, friends, again, these questions will be in with the recording on the Mighty Network. So you can go there and look at the questions again. Maybe you just want to pick one and journal about it. You don't necessarily have to share on the Mighty Network unless you want to, but let these be a way of expanding your experience here tonight and practicing in such a way that's reflective and internal for you. Thank you so much for being here again, whether you are here for the live session or you're watching the recording. Thank you so much. If you're watching on YouTube and you'd like to join us live, there is a link in the comment section there, so you can click on that and join us on the Mighty Network Sundays at 6 p.m. Central. Thank you all so much for being here. Until next time, blessings to all and have a good night.